fired? Tell me who was fired in this situation, because somebody should have been fired. Okay? Hey y'all, welcome and or welcome back to my channel. My name is Janae, if you didn't know, and today's video is another true crime episode. So if you're ready, let's go. Okay y'all, so real quick before we start the case, can we get into this hair a little bit? So this is the longest wig I have ever had in my life. And so some of y'all, this ain't even that long. Some people, this they real like this they the length of their hair. But I don't wear a lot of wigs. Now I braid my hair real quick, but wigs I don't be doing because okay. But I decided to grab this wig because it was on sale, and if you don't know, we love a good sale. I bought this some months ago. It was on sale for like I think it was like $10-$20 maybe. I don't know, but I do know it was on sale. And so I was like, let me get it. But we're not going to run our hands through it too much because she's synthetic. And if you know what that means, then you know what that means. And if you don't know what it means, just don't go around touching people's hair. Okay? Okay. But yeah, I like it though. Oh, I did my nails finally. So here are my nails this week. I was feeling real spring-like and like neon and bright. I feel like I haven't showed y'all my nails in real time in so long. I don't know what this was. I don't know why I just like fucking turned into a gang member. But yeah, these are my nails for the week. It feels so good to have my nails back on. Like I be feeling bald-headed without nails. Like, do y'all feel like that when y'all don't have something that y'all are so used to having? Like when people walk out of the house without their purse, who always had a purse, they be like, I feel naked. You know what I mean? So without my nails, I be feeling kind of bald-headed. Sorry about last week. I don't even know what happened last week. There was like legit no reason for me not to upload. I really just kind of played myself in, y'all, because I really feel like I should have uploaded last week, and I'm so sorry. You know what? I do know why I didn't upload last week, and it's because I was watching the Letitia Stout trial, and I didn't really do no research of my own. I've been like following this trial, and initially I wasn't even gonna watch the trial. But you know what? I'm not even going to get into that because I might still record a video about the trial. So I'll tell y'all about how I wasn't even going to watch the trial in that video. But I will say this. If y'all have not watched the trial, or if y'all don't know about the case, get into it. Just get into it. Just take a little look-see, a little peek-see. Now, if you are sensitive to like crimes against children, then please spare yourself. Don't look into it. Protect your mental health at all costs. Like, don't do it. But if you can tolerate that type of content, then it's worth a peek. So now with all that said, we're just gonna go ahead and jump right into the case. So it is May 11th, 2015 in a nice suburban neighborhood in Sand Lake, Michigan, when Connie Ream realized that she has not heard from her neighbors all day. And this kind of struck her as odd because she usually talked to them or texted them every single day. And it had been a full 24 hours since she heard from either of the people who resided in that house. And so she thought it was kind of weird. And so she went over to the house and she knocked on the door, but there was no answer. So she didn't really think too much of it. Maybe they just took a quick little getaway and didn't tell nobody. Like, she didn't really think too much of it. And so the next day she went back to the house to see if the couple was there as well, because she hadn't heard from them for 2 days now at this point. And she went once again, knocked on the door, and there was once again no answer. So finally on the third day, when Connie hadn't heard from her neighbors, she decided, like, okay, they haven't been here in 3 days. Let me see if I can get in the house some kind of way. But it didn't take very much for her to get in the house, because she tried the doorknob, which she hadn't tried obviously for the first 2 days, and it was unlocked. So she was able to gain entry into her neighbor's home. And when she got into the house, nothing looked amiss until she made it to the bedroom. And that is where she found the bodies of her neighbors on their bedroom floor. And so she ran down the road to some firefighters and let them know what she had just found, because coincidentally there had just been a fire in her neighborhood. So firefighters were on the scene of the house fire when Connie discovered her neighbors. And so she ran to the firefighters and she told them what she had just discovered inside of her neighbor's home. And they contacted the police, got law enforcement there. And it was discovered that the man had been shot 5 times and the woman once. And Connie was able to positively identify her neighbors as Marty and Glenna Durham. Now we're going to rewind a little bit to talk about who Marty and Glenna were and how they became one. So Martin Durham, aka Marty, was born on March 1st, 1969 to his parents Charles and Lillian. And he was the middle child. He had a sister and a brother. Now I don't know which one was older and which one was younger than him, but he was the middle child to a sister and a brother. And according to family and friends, Marty was an outdoorsman. He enjoyed to be outside, hunting, fishing, anything that was like not in the house. He was here for it. But other than that, there's not really much known about his early childhood. So moving forward to when Marty was a teenager, it's the late 80s and he's still the outdoorsman. He likes working on cars with his cousin and doing stuff that teenagers was doing in the 80s. I don't know that, like, I don't want to insinuate like, but maybe. One day, Marty was working on a car with his cousin and this beautiful native woman walks by and she gets to chit-chatting it up with Marty. And his cousin is over there still working on the car looking like, okay, you ain't gonna talk to me? And the answer was no, she wasn't interested in him. She didn't want to talk to him at all. Now, Marty has seen this girl before and she has seen him before. They seen each other around because they had mutual friends together, but they wasn't friends, you know. And this young lady's name was Glenna. And like I already said, Glenna was a native girl. She was from the Ojibwa tribe and she was described as a sweet, caring, always taking care of others type of person. And she too was the middle child in her family. She had an older sister and a younger brother. And her brother was like, I think maybe 9 years apart, if I'm not mistaken. They had some distance between them. And so growing up, she really exhibited this always taking care of him, like caring, nurturing side of her. So like I said, she strikes up this conversation with Marty in the late 80s. They both teenagers at this point, and Marty takes this as an opportunity to just go for it. He just shoots for the goal, okay? And he asks Glenna out on a date. And she accepts. So they end up going on a date the following Saturday. And it was decided that they was going to go to a drive-in movie. Now, if you know, you already know that it wasn't no watching no movie at the drive-in. And that actually ended up being the night that Marty lost his virginity. And this wasn't no hit and quit it. Marty and Glenna dated for a little bit after this. But one day when Marty and his cousin was going hunting, Marty's cousin asked him, you know, hey, how's Glenna doing? What's up with that? Da 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 da. And Marty said that unfortunately the two had ended things. And a reason wasn't really given, but the two had ended up parting ways. And so it was what it was. Marty moved on, and so did Glenna. So at 17, Glenna would meet a man named Bob Norman and would end up getting married to him as well. And he was 5 years older than her. He was 22 and she was 17. I mean, maybe that's how it was back in the 80s. I really don't know, but is that not a crime? I feel like that's a crime. I don't know. Maybe her mom signed a consent form. But then again, she is native. So what if he was native and that's their customs? So I don't know. I don't know how that worked, but nonetheless, he was 22, she was 17, they were married, and they forged ahead in life and ended up having 2 kids together, which was pretty much destined to be in Glenna's future because, like I told y'all before, nurturing, caring, motherly, it was just natural for her to become a mother. And so Bob would go out to work and Glenna would stay at home. Now, the dynamic of their relationship, I personally feel like it was a grooming type of situation where he kind of made her to be who he wanted her to be, because it said that Bob was very controlling. And instead of treating Glenna like she was his spouse, he more or less took on like a fatherly role. He would be telling her how to do this, how to do that, when and where to go, like very much do what I say. So while Glenna was dealing with Bob and his controlling ways, Marty would meet and marry himself a 17-year-old girl. Now, I don't know how old he was at this point, but he married a 17-year-old named Christina Keller. And almost immediately after they got married, Christina gave birth to their first child. Now, the fact that she gave birth very shortly after she was married leads me to believe that he got her pregnant. And back then, it was very unacceptable to be having a child out of wedlock. And so they got married. They loved each other, but you know, maybe marriage wasn't so soon in their future. But I don't know for real. That's just what I think. And then 2 years later, when she was 19, she would have 2 more children. Now, I don't know if they was twins or if they was ghetto twins. Either way, she was 19, but she had both of them. Now, Marty and Christina's marriage was full of ups and downs, like pretty much like a typical marriage. You have your high points, you have your low points. But overall, it's a happy marriage. But there was one problem that Christina really was just like, come on now. And it was the fact that Marty did not like to work. Marty did not want to go to work. He would much rather be out hunting or doing something else rather than working. So when he did end up getting a job at a place called Steelcase, which is I think it's like a furniture manufacturing company for like offices, hospitals, classrooms, stuff like that. Christina was happy. Like, he finally got a job. It seems as though he maybe not necessarily like it, but hell, he going, so that's a plus. But unfortunately though, just 10 days after he got this job, on February 16th in 1995, when Marty was on his way home from work, he would be in a major accident that left him with multiple injuries and had him in a coma for weeks. And when Marty finally did wake up from this coma, he was like, what the hell? Who are you? And why are you here? He didn't remember that Christina was his wife. He did remember some parts of his life though, but when he saw Christina, he was kind of just like, okay. He didn't remember her. He didn't remember marrying her. He didn't remember having the kids. Like, it was bad. It was real bad. And not only did the accident affect his memory, but it affected his personality as well. Marty was no longer the happy-go-lucky, jovial, jokey individual that he once used to be. He was very snarky. He was very snappy at people. He had a very short temper now. And even though he went through rehab and he did regain most of his memory and he did remember Christina, their kids, and all of that stuff, the personality portion of him never went back to what it used to be. And Christina was no longer in love with Marty because this was not the man that she married. And Christina has stuck by him through this whole recovery process, but she just could not get over the fact that Marty wasn't who he used to be. And so she and Marty ended up getting a divorce. So after the divorce, Marty would eventually end up getting a settlement from his accident, and he would end up using that money from the settlement to buy himself a house in 2001. And to this house moved Marty, 2 of his kids, and a pet African gray parrot that Christina and Marty had owned during marriage, but I guess like Marty got custody of the bird, and so he moved in with Marty to this new house as well. And it was around this time that Glenna ended up coming back into the picture. I don't know how that happened, if they just ran across each other while they was out one day. I really don't know how they like re-met up, but they did. And she too had also been divorced from her previous husband. So it was kind of like fate that they had like bumped into each other again. Both of them are now divorced. You know, they've lived their other lives, and now the universe has brought them back together. And so they've rekindled their love ship. So they decide to give it another chance. They start dating again. And so eventually Glenna ends up moving into Marty's home with him, his kids, and Bud. Bud is the bird. But it's definitely a tale as old as time. Everything was good in the beginning. Everybody was happy. Everything was going all fine and dandy until Marty's health started to decline. And this is partially due to the long-term effects of his accident. So time goes on, and it's now 2010, and Marty is on disability. He's getting a disability check for around $1,100 a month. And Marty's health declines to the point where he needs a primary caregiver. And this person would become Glenna. And so she would essentially get a check from the government for being Marty's primary caregiver. And the check that she got was roughly around $3,000 a month. So with Marty's disability check and Glenna's primary caregiver check, they were accumulating roughly around $4,000 a month. So the two of them essentially didn't have to work. They were pretty much living off of those 2 checks. And the way that their relationship worked was that Glenna handled all the finances. She paid all the bills. She paid the mortgage. She determined how much was allocated to food, recreational, food, like clothes. You know, she just handled all of their finances. That's like one of the only things that she was pretty much in total control of within their relationship, because it said that Marty was controlling. He pretty much ended up being like Glenna's first husband in the fact that like, where you going, what you doing, etc., etc. And so now that y'all know like the little backstory of Marty and Glenna, we are back at the crime scene. So police and first responders are at the house and they pretty much declare Glenna and Marty DOA. And so they're looking around, they processing the crime scene, and they notice that the place is like a little messy. It don't necessarily look like a robbery gone wrong. It kind of just looks like stuff is just in disarray and maybe they weren't the neatest people in the world, right? And the fact that it didn't look like a robbery gone wrong was kind of corroborated by the fact that there was no forced entry. So whoever did this, it was kind of personal and they knew the Durams because, again, no forced entry. It don't look like the place was robbed. It really just looks like somebody came in, murdered the couple, and left. And detectives were in the house for about an hour. Okay, an hour before they realized that one of those two was not dead. So the lieutenant arrived on the scene and he asked like, hey, did anybody check their pulses or what? And I guess everybody was just like, oh no, they did. So we didn't think to check their pulses. But when the lieutenant got there, he decided to check their pulses. And it turns out that Marty actually, in fact, did not have a pulse. But when he went to go check Glenna's pulse, she kind of like jolted to life. Like her eyes flew open and she kind of like went into a panic. Like, what the hell is happening? And oh my gosh, she's not dead. So they hurry up and get EMTs to grab her and they ship her off to the hospital right away because what the hell? Y'all been here for an hour and ain't nobody decided to check their pulse? Who was fired? Tell me who was fired in this situation because somebody should have been fired. Okay? Anyway, so Glenna is now at or on her way to the hospital when detectives discover a revolver under like the love seat in the living room. So they obviously collect this for evidence because this could potentially be said murder weapon. And they get to talking to family and friends and they want to know like, is there any reason why this should have happened to them? Like, did anybody hate them? Did they have any animosity? Like, tell us something. So based off what the family and friends was saying, Marty and Glenna will argue, but it was just like little bickering, like typical marital arguments, nothing major, nothing out of the ordinary. But there was one thing that this could potentially be about. So y'all know how I said that Marty had his car accident and he was on disability. Well, he also was prescribed pain pills. And so what Marty and Glenna would do to pretty much kind of like subsidize their income or just make a little bit more money on the side, Marty would take just a little bit of his pain pills and they would sell the rest. And so that was pretty much the plug out there in Sand Lake. And that's the only thing that people could think of that would probably constitute this. Like maybe this was a drug deal that went south. That's the only thing they could think of. So with this new information, they start investigating. They want to know who they sold to, how much they sold, when they were sold, and like who was the last people they was talking to, right? But just as they start going down this path, they get a little bit of new information. And now there's two versions of this part of the story that I've heard. Now, one of them was that the kids were allowed, like they were given permission by the police to go to their dad's house the next day to retrieve valuables and the bird. And then there was another source that reported that the kids broke into the house to get valuables and the bird. Either way, whether they were granted permission by the police or whether they broke in, they went to go retrieve the bird and retrieve valuable items from their dad's home. And during the course of their retrieval of Bud, Marty's kids discovered some notes that was addressed to Glenna's kids. And these notes appear to have been unaliving letters, pretty much just saying, sorry that I've been a disappointment to you for these last 12 years, yada, yada, yada. I love you, etc., etc. Love, Mom. So Marty's kids called the investigators right away and turned these letters over. And so now detectives are faced with like, okay, was this a murder unaliving attempt or was this a drug deal gone wrong? Like, they got to figure it out. So once again, they start talking to friends and family. And I believe it was one of Marty's kids who ended up telling the detectives that like, yeah, they will argue and it was nothing serious, but they will also joke with each other about getting rid of the other one, like waiting for the other one to die for insurance money and stuff like that. And he could always tell that his dad was like joking, But when Glenna said it, she was joking, but she wasn't joking. You know what I mean? Like, it was kind of giving off, I'm serious, but let me act like I'm playing. And Marty's son also said that he found foreclosure papers ripped up in, I think it was a bedroom drawer or something like that. Now, real quick side note though, I don't know why the kids is finding all of this stuff and not the detectives. Like, y'all didn't see all that stuff when y'all was in there the day prior. But anyways, due to all these new discoveries, the notes that Glenna left her children, the ripped up foreclosure letter, the detectives started looking into the Durham's finances, and they found that Glenna was a gambler. It was learned that Glenna in 1 year had spent over $75,000 gambling. That's a lot of money. And due to Glenna's gambling habits, the couple's finances were in shambles. But remember, Glenna handles all the finances. So Marty pretty much just oblivious to the whole thing. He think bills is being paid. He think mortgages is out here handled. And they not. They not. Glenna wasn't paying no bills. Glenna was paying the casino's bills, okay? It was determined that the house was in foreclosure and Marty had no idea that this was happening. And in that foreclosure letter, it was pretty much telling them that their house was in foreclosure and there was nothing they could do about it. Their house was set to be auctioned off on May 12th, 2015. And if that date don't sound familiar to y'all, that's one day after the shooting and one day before the discovery of Marty and Glenna. So not only was all of this leading detectives down the path of murder unalive attempt, but the ballistics testing for the gun that was found under the couch, it came back. And it pretty much said that that was the weapon that was likely used in not only the shooting of Marty, but in Glenna as well. And it's very unusual to have somebody come into your house, use your gun, because it was also determined that the gun belonged to Marty's father or grandfather. I don't really know. But either way, it's very unlikely that a person is going to come into your house, find your gun, shoot you with your gun, and then leave it. Right? So now at this point, detectives are pretty much desperate to talk to Glenna because at this point, she could literally be a suspect or a victim, right? Because even though a lot of those circumstances was unlikely to happen, like a person intruding your home using your own gun to shoot you, it's not unheard of, right? So they wanted to talk to Glenna to find out more. They needed to know for sure whether she was a suspect or a victim. So after about a month of being in a coma, Glenna finally wakes up and detectives feel like this is their opportunity to talk to her. But Glenna has suffered major memory loss and brain damage, and so the detectives were essentially unable to talk to her at this point, but that didn't stop them from still investigating. And so they obtained a warrant to get Glenna's phone records. So once they recovered the data from these phone records, it was determined that somebody had used Glenna's phone in the early hour mornings of May 13th to go to the Ruger website. And a Ruger is the same type of gun that was found under the couch. So somebody was on Glenna's phone researching Ruger, and they had gone to this website at least 4 times that morning. And again, May 13th was the day of the discovery of Glenna and Marty. And so now the police got to figure out, was this Glenna who was searching the Ruger website during the early hour mornings of May 13th? Because if it was, then that means that she had shot Marty on the 11th, was chilling around the house trying to figure out what she was going to do next, and then shot herself 2 days later expecting to die, except for she didn't. Or that means that somebody came into the house, they shot Marty and Glenna, was out here chilling and maxing and relaxing in their crib, using Glenna's phone, eating big ass sandwiches and shit, just chilling, and left early that morning, and Glenna was out here suffering for 2 days with a gunshot wound to the head. So at this point, the police pretty much had an idea of which of those 2 stories was true, but they still had to get some concrete evidence. So about 5 months after the attack, Glenna was finally well enough to talk to the detectives. So she went down to the station and they questioned her. But Glenna says she has no memory of the attack. She don't know what happened. She says she just woke up trying to find out where her husband was. That's all she remembers, is waking up wondering where her husband was. And since the police didn't have any concrete evidence to hold her, all they could do was question her, and Glenna was free to go that day, and the investigation continued. But it definitely did seem like the case was at a standstill at this point. But there would be a strange break in the case. So remember I told y'all about the African gray parrot that Marty's kids went to go retrieve along with the important documents, right? So they got the bird, they returned it back to their mother because remember I told you Marty had got custody of the bird in the divorce. And so once Marty passed away, Christina was able to regain custody of Bud. So Bud is now living with Christina and everybody is pretty much trying to relearn how to live without Marty in their lives. And life seems to be moving forward for everybody except for Bud. Bud seems to be traumatized by this whole event because he was there when everything happened. So about a month after the attack, Bud is living with Christina, like I said, and Christina said that he starts squawking at night, okay? Like just going off, won't stop, won't shut up. And she's just kind of like, okay, what the hell? Now, it would be at this point where I would just have to say, bye-bye, buddy. But, you know, Christina is a better woman than I am, and she did not get rid of her bird. And she started listening to him. And when she did this, when she actually started listening to what Bud was saying, she could hear two distinct voices that sounded like it was a man and a woman. And she kind of got freaked out. And so she started recording Bud. And it is very audible. Bud is not just squawking, okay? He is having full-blown dialogue. And in this dialogue, there's a man and a woman, and they're arguing. And the woman is pretty much just saying, you know, F you white boy, F you white boy. And the man voice is saying, F you Glenna, F you Glenna. So it's apparent that this is now Glenna and Marty's voices that he is imitating. And the final thing that Bud said is no, don't shoot. Don't effing shoot. So Christina turns this recording over to investigators and they are like, so almost exactly a year to the day of the attack on May 1st, 2016, it's announced that the district attorney's office could potentially be considering using Bud as an eyewitness. So with this new eyewitness testimony and all the other things that they gathered, they are able to charge Glenna. And on June 24th, 2016, she was arrested and charged with the murder of Marty Duram. And the prosecution was pretty much going to go into this trial with the murder-suicide theory. But before they got to trial, they wanted to make sure that they covered all of their bases. But there was one thing that was kind of stumping them. They did not want the defense to be able to say, like, hey, this was definitely a robbery gone wrong. And that can be proven because it was very well known that Marty and Glenna had actual cash in their house in their safe. But when the detectives searched the house, there was no money ever found in the safe. So the prosecution wanted to make sure they covered that base. Like, okay, so we need to figure out what happened to this money. Well, it turned out that Marty's children, the day they went to go retrieve Bud, they also stumbled across some money in their daddy's safe. And they took it. So once the prosecutors found that out, they was like, oh, okay, cool. So now we know what happened to the money in the safe. Y'all shouldn't have been stealing it. Y'all shouldn't have took it. But now we know what happened to the money in the safe. Now that puts Glenna back in the spotlight to be the only suspect. And so the prosecution was kind of happy that the kids had sold the money and not somebody else. So now that that's out the way, that's how the prosecution presented their case. Now the defense, they was kind of like, okay, how could this have happened? That's impossible, because in order for her to have killed Marty and shot him 5 times, she would have had to shoot him, go in the living room, shoot herself, not once, but potentially twice, because they couldn't really determine if there was 2 bullets or 1 in her head. I don't know why they couldn't determine that, but they couldn't. And so shoot herself potentially twice, hide the gun under the couch, go back into the room, and just to lay there and die with Marty, right? And so they was pretty much just like, how could she have done that? It's like impossible. However, the defense called the neurosurgeon who worked on Glenna, and he pretty much said that there were no major arteries and no major blood vessels that was hit when she was shot in the head. And so it was very, very possible that she could have still been functioning after said gunshot wound to the head. And there has been at least one case that I know of personally. I mean, not personally, but that I've seen, that a man was shot in the head multiple times and he pretty much went about his daily routine. I mean, in the end, he did end up passing away. But the point is, he was still functioning prior to dying with gunshot wounds to the head, right? So it's very possible. Now, I don't know if Bud's testimony was used in the trial, but whether it was or if it wasn't, the jury found Glenna guilty, and she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, and that's where she at right now. But there's a big divide on this case. There is people in Glenna's family and in Marty's family who still believe that Glenna did not do this. They believe that she loved Marty too much to have been the one to do this. They still think that it has something to do with them selling pills, and they do not think that justice has been served in this case. But then you have other people who are more of the sense like, she did it. She had the motive. How coincidental of this to happen a day before y'all house was supposed to be auctioned off. Like, make it make sense, sis. You did it, and that's what it is. But y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. Do y'all think Glenna did it? Do y'all think this was a drug deal gone bad? Like, let me know in the comments. Let's discuss. So yeah, that is the end of today's video. Thank you so very much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. You kinda cute. You kinda cute. I don't got on no earrings. I did it again. Bitch, you don't need this much wine in your life. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Until Marty's health started to fail. Not fail. It didn't fail. So now it's 2010, and due to Marty's health, he's on disability. So he gets a wait, what was I saying before that? So with Marty's disability check and Glenna's healthcare, no. So with Marty's disability check and Glenna's healthcare, anyway, so Glenna's now at or on her way to the hospital when detectives at the scene, discover is it a revolver? But the ballistics tested, that's hard to say.